welcome back to our homestead. Today is mid of November and we'll be having some cold weather, especially at nighttime. It's nice and chilly today. I love it. So today I decided to harvest the last of my produce from my garden. You guys know my motto that when in abundance today, store away for tomorrow, and that's exactly what we're gonna do today. I am harvesting leeks. Look at these beautiful guys from my garden, and we've been eating them throughout the season. When we need to just go in the garden, pull out a couple, use them up for dinner. But I also want to store away for the winter. You know, I'm a huge believer in having a garden, not just for fun, where you go and you pick one cucumber or one tomato for your dinner sometime in the summer and that's it. Those are fun as well. But I'm talking about having a garden enough to feed your family through the season. I know it's not possible for everyone, but here on our homestead, I believe that we can grow some of the foods that can nourish my family throughout the season. So I started these leeks from tiny little seeds back in March, back in the house right on the growing light. And when they were about 2.5 inches tall, I came and I planted them in the garden with my girls. It was, I want to believe, last week of May. So like I said, you know, you can grow a little, you can grow a lot, but we've been pulling a little bit here and there, and now the rest of it, I need to pull out the whole entire row. I'm going to wash them several times because, believe you guys, a lot of it is actually in the soil, so it has to be washed very well. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to preserve it. The soil is nice and loose because it rained the last few days, so I don't have to use a shovel or pitchforks. But if the soil was very dry, then it is best to use some sort of a pitchfork to loosen the soil around, so it will be easy to pull them out of the ground. I'm going to attempt to use everything on this plant, okay? Well, except for the roots. The roots I'm not going to be using, but even the greens, these long greens, I'm going to attempt to use for my cooking because nothing should be wasted. Okay, so now I need to do the wash, at least first, maybe even second wash, because if you look at them, they are still covered in dirt. All of it is still dirt everywhere in the roots. So I'm just thankful that the garden hose defrosted a little bit by noontime, because in the morning everything was frozen. All right, so I'm just gonna do like a general rinse, remove some of the dirt here outdoors. And I always like to use an old laundry basket to do this wash as well, because it has so many holes in it and it's not useful for my laundry anymore, and I can do the wash here as well. It's pretty useful. Okay, so now I need to process them even further and get them ready for storage. All right, so let me just take out one of these guys from my basket here and I'll show you what I'm gonna do. All right, so some of it is not in a great shape and I'm not gonna keep those greens, but look at this. So I have this big, beautiful root, okay, and I'm gonna cut that off right there at the beginning of the root. And then I'm gonna cut, well, actually I'm gonna take this leaf off because it's falling off. All right, so then I'm gonna come and I'm gonna cut probably another inch right where the leaves begin to branch out, right into these long stems, into those long leaves, I guess you want to call them. So that's what I'm going to cut, and then the rest I'm going to examine, and if it's in a good shape, I'm going to save them. If it's not in a good shape, I'm just going to throw them into my compost pile. All right, so here's my beautiful leek. I already washed them outside twice, but the roots I don't need, so I'm just going to put them in the compost pile, and I'm going to examine it, make sure it's nice and clean, and I'm going to cut about an inch above where they begin to separate. And look at this beautiful leek that I have grown. And now I'm just going to examine the greens, and the greens are okay looking. I mean, they are a little broken up by the washing process, but they're fine. So I'm going to put them aside in another pile because I'm not going to throw them away. I'm going to actually process them for something else, and I'll show you guys. All right, here's another one. Remove the outer layer. That's no good. It's going to go in my compost pile. Cut off the roots. We don't need that. come all the way up here to where it begins to split into. Clean up a little bit, clean up a little bit. All right, so now I'm gonna wash this pile one more time because they need to be washed one more time before they're stored away. And let's take a look at the greens. And some of the greens are damaged, so I'm gonna examine what is good. And I'm just gonna cut off the tops that are damaged. I don't need them. And this pile is nice and green. I'm gonna save them, put them aside to save them for something else. Okay, so I've ended up with a nice big pile of leeks. Some of them are a little thinner, some of them are nice and thick. Anyway, they're all gonna be delicious. And I have 2 big bowls of greens as well. I was very selective what I'm gonna keep and what I'm gonna throw away. I have plenty. So those that were yellowed or damaged or just broken up, I just threw them into a pile, a compost pile. All right, so what am I gonna do with these guys now? I'm gonna wash them again. So now I have prepared a sink with cold water and I'm gonna wash it one more time, the final and really, really good wash. Because they grow in the ground so deep, it's maybe even a good idea to cut across on the bottom with a sharp knife and just make sure that there's no soil anywhere and rinse it all as well, just like this. Okay, the vegetables are washed and now I'm going to process them for storage. And this is what I've decided to do. I'm going to process them and store them away in 3 ways. 1, the old-fashioned, just in the refrigerator, just for short term, and these leeks will last me about 3-4 weeks in the fridge. So how I'm gonna do that, I'm just gonna take a whole leek like this. Well, I'm just gonna take a few of them, like put them together, wrap them in a paper towel, okay, loosely, paper towel. They are slightly moist still from being washed. So I'm gonna put 3 in here. And I'm gonna just wrap them in a towel, paper towel just like this. A Ziploc bag, it's a gallon size. And it's gonna go in a fridge on the bottom shelf where I keep my vegetables. And that's it, nothing special to it. But I do know that they will not last forever in my fridge, so I want a longer shelf life. And I'm gonna do it in 2 methods now, okay? So number 1, I'm gonna freeze it. You guys know that I love to freeze vegetables. They're so convenient. You have them on the go, grab out of a freezer and use them as you need to, right? So, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. You may want to freeze them in the whole length, just like this, if you wish. You can even slice them long ways and make sure that there's no sand left inside or anything. Also a good way of freezing them for your for long-term storage, and they will last you at least till next season. I can promise you they will last you till next season, over winter. And the third way is going to be even longer shelf life. I'm going to be dehydrating them. I like to cut them up into smaller pieces. Try to be as uniform as possible so they all dehydrate at the same time. I'm going to be layering them in a single layer on my dehydrating trays, and they're going to go into the dehydrator that I have. So let me get going. I've decided to put a towel into an empty bowl, so when I put my leeks in there, they will absorb extra fluid. All right, so I'm just gonna cut it in manageable size. So first I'm gonna slice it across with a sharp knife, put them down, and just cut them in the chunks you like. And I'm gonna keep them pretty much uniform, and they will be very easy to be pulled out whenever from a freezer or from a dehydrator. From a dehydrating jar, because I like to keep my dehydrated vegetables in a jar where there is no air. All right, so see, I'm just shredding them into like a little pieces just like this. Okay, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do with all of them. It's gonna take me some time to go through all of them. And as I'm going through them, I just want to mention why leeks are so good. First of all, leeks can be used anywhere that onion is used. So an onion, I feel like, at least in my cooking in our house, onion is like that staple that goes with everything. Onion goes with everything. So have you done onion and peppers in like an omelet, Western style omelet with some ham and cheese? Well, instead of an onion, use leeks. Okay? Or anytime you're making a soup, instead of adding onion, add leeks. I know there's a very famous recipe of leek and potato soup, but I can promise you there are so many other ways of doing soups with leeks. I was just reading not too long ago that back in the day, leeks were also been treasured as a medicinal vegetable. So it's a very old vegetable. So it said that back in the Hippocrates days, you know, one of those great physicians that is still known for throughout the world for different things. Hippocrates used leeks to stop bleeding, nosebleeds specifically. And I was like, cool, I am wondering why leeks, you know. Well, leeks is high in vitamin K. And any of my healthcare providers out there, you guys know, who when somebody comes in with a very high INR and PT and PTT and all those coagulant markers, what do we give them? We give them vitamin K to help to stop the bleeding and prevent any kind of dangerous bleeding. So yeah, so even back in those days, it was known that it was medicinally and nutritionally beneficial to us. It's also high in iron, in vitamin B's, I forget which ones, and also in vitamin C. So it's a good vegetable to have. Very versatile. So I'm just going to fill up a little bit into each bag. And the Food Saver, the beauty of Food Saver, that it removes all the air. So this looks about right. This looks about right. So now I'm gonna put it in my Food Saver machine, just like this. It's gonna be noisy. And now it's sealing. And that's it. And I have to go through the entire bowl full of these leeks to process them just in the same way. I always like to label my bags because, see, look at that. Isn't that pretty? And it's gonna go in the freezer. I'm gonna label it because I wanna know what's in it and what year I've done it. Well, it took me a little while, but I got all of them nicely packaged in my Food Saver bags. So it's gonna go in the freezer. All right, now what to do with these greens. And you know what? Listen, how often you guys go to the grocery store and you see leeks and sometimes the greens are attached to them and you just cut them off and throw them away. And that's what I used to do as well a long time ago until I realized that they're actually very, very useful. If you guys know my freezer bags with all of my trimmings of the vegetables, when I cook with vegetables, I peel an onion, carrot, whatever, celery. I take those chunks that normally would go in a compost or the trash for some people. I put them in my freezer bag and then I keep them in a freezer until the day when I'm making broth. And when I'm making a broth, I will pull out that Ziploc bag and I put it as my aromatics into the broth. So this can go into the aromatic Ziploc bag as well. It's going to be perfect. I also learned that these greens are also usable as far as deep fried. They come out nice and crispy, or they can be chopped up and added to any soup, any stew, anything like that. So I'm going to preserve it so it will be shelf stable preservation by dehydrating. So first I need to cut them up into manageable sizes as well. As you guys know, I like to prep things ahead of time, so then when I'm cooking with it, it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm just chopping them up in even type of chunks of greens, okay? So I don't want one huge, one little, because I want them to dehydrate at the same time and nothing to be burned, okay? So this is, I think, pretty good as far as being in chunks, uniform chunks. So I'm just chopping them all up, and I'm gonna be putting them on the trays of my dehydrator. If you guys don't have a dehydrator, this is possible to do in the oven, but I do have to warn you that it's a little bit more work and you have to be vigilant. Why? Because they can burn fast. So you have to choose the lowest setting in the oven and keep the door ajar at all times so the moisture can actually escape the oven when you're doing it. And keep an eye on it. Don't leave the kitchen, don't leave the house, keeping an eye on it. All right, but I'm gonna be putting mine in the dehydrator because it's much easier for me to manage it that way. Okay, now it's for the dehydrator time. So all my greens, I'm gonna be just spreading them in one layer, just like this, single layer on each tray. And I'm gonna put the setting on my dehydrator as a vegetable. They have herbs, fruit, whatever, I'm gonna put as a vegetable, okay? So, and now to the next tray. Most likely I'm gonna set this overnight and I will check on it in the morning because they're quite thick and large, even though I try to pick the healthiest greens out of all, but still there's a lot of moisture in these greens, so I know it's going to take time to dehydrate. I'm going to show you guys tomorrow how I identify if it's dehydrated enough for safety, for food storage, as far as how dry they should be before I put them away in a jar. Okay, that's tomorrow. Okay, this has been drying overnight and it's still really nice, beautiful color, nice and green color. And they smell very mild oniony smell, but almost sweet smell to it. Nothing that pungent onion smell. So I'm just gonna take them off the trays. I have them on my dehydrating trays, and I'm just gonna dump them all into like a bowl or something so I can work with them much easier that way. Glad that I actually took them to the basement rather than doing them in my kitchen because the whole house would have smelled like it. All right, so how do I know that they are dry enough? When I pick one up, it completely crumbles in my hands. Okay, completely crumbles in my hands. Or if I put it into a glass jar, it's gonna bounce around just like it's doing right now, right? If you attempt to break it in half, it will literally break. Okay, it will break. There will be no limp, nothing. You don't want any moisture left in these greens at all before you store them, because if anything is slightly moist, they can turn moldy, and that has happened to me in the past, and then the whole batch has to be thrown out. So the other thing that I like to do is when I turn off the dehydrator, I like to allow them to cool off, because dehydrator, even though it's in a low temperature, it still has heat, right? And they're still kind of warm. So because of that warmth, they may hold a little bit of moisture. Okay, so I'm going to let them completely cool off before I take them off the trays. Now they're completely cooled, and I'm taking them in here. I can tell you that I'm going to need more than just one jar. Now they are kind of bulky, right? Because they're dry and they're bulky. You may turn them into powder if you like. This is the time to turn them into powder and then use them as seasoning. Okay, you can season your dishes with that. Last night I made dinner for my family and it came out so good. And it was leeks with shrimp and wine sauce. It was so good. It was so good. And I threw some other vegetables in there. Like I think I had broccoli in there, green broccoli. It was really good dinner. So, all right. Last tray, last tray. All right, so now I'm going to be storing it in my mason jar. Make sure that your hands are nice and clean and dry because you don't want to add any more moisture to it. Now, because I have so much, some of it I will turn into powder. And some of it I will leave like this in a chunk so I can add it to my soups and stews and that sort of thing. All right, so I think it's pretty full. Okay. I'm going to be putting my cover on, just the lid. And I have this attachment that goes with my food saver. And I'm just going to put this on top, just like that, push it all the way down. Attach my the hose to it. Turn the thing that says accessory. I don't know if you guys can see that. And it's removing all of the air from this jar. So the machine turned off on its own and it just tells me that the suction is complete. So I'm going to remove this, remove the top, and this should be completely tight. Look at that. I cannot remove it. See, it's completely tight. So this is it. You can add the ring to it if you want, or you don't have to. And make sure you label it so you know what's in your jar. The other jar I'm going to be filling with a crushed up into powder-like greens. And they're going to be used for seasoning. Okay, you can use that for seasoning. So I'm just going to put it in my food processor. You can put it in a blender or any other thing just to pulverize it. Even a coffee grinder if you have one designated just for that. So let me just make sure I can close this properly. All right, and I'm going to turn it on. It may be noisy. All right, look at that. It went down in size by a lot. So now again, I'm going to be filling up my jar. Stay. I really should use some sort of funnel or something. And now I can fill up a whole lot more in here. See that? Isn't that nice? And it's amazing that it still retained its color. I love it. Yeah, the funnel is working way better. All right, a little bit more to fill it up to the top. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I think that's full. All right. Now I'm going to be sealing up this one as well, using the same method. Just putting that attachment right over. Where's my little attachment hose here? That's it. See, it stopped on its own. I'm going to disconnect it. I'm going to take this off. And guess what? This guy is sealed nice and tight. Again, I need to put a label on it and a whole lot more fit in here. Okay, friends, so I have some dehydrated powder and still full leaves left of leek greens, and they're going to be so useful in the winter cooking. I also have about 12 small bags that are packaged and I froze in my freezer, and I put 2 or 3 bags in the fridge as well for a very short-term storage of the leeks. Friends, I hope you're encouraged to grow leeks. Leeks are very easy to grow and they're so versatile. You know, many people ask me about what's the best way to cook something simple like rice and beans. And what do I say? Season it. Season that very plain food. Make it taste and smell good. And this is one of the ways of doing it. Use leeks, use onion, garlic. It's so good. And it's so much better homemade because no anti-caking agents. It was all organic, no chemicals were sprayed, and nothing chemically was induced or added to these greens. So friends, I hope you are encouraged in a little bit of homesteading, so try something new.